Listen to me read few pages of What Happened to Jeanette Uzor by Miracle Emeka-Nkwor. Please note this is not an audiobook, it's just a preview, and if it hooks you, support the author. If you have the book already, just keep the excitement going. This is the book cover. It's pretty. First, the blurb, the book description. Every year at Afobiri Secondary School, a student dies under suspicious circumstances. Ebere thinks there's a killer on the loose. A year after their best friend Janet Uzo drowns, Pamela and Ebere are trying to cope and move on in their own unique ways. Pamela buries her emotions, while Ebere has been on a mission to find out what really happened to their friend, an excellent swimmer whose death seemed unfair and unconscionable. When Pamela begins to receive sinister letters threatening her life, she finally has to confront her fears. With the help of Ebere, on-off boyfriend Eche, good friend Daniel Khalil, she sets out to find out who is after her life. But to succeed, they must first unravel the mystery behind Janet's death before the clock runs out, and Pamela finds herself at the mercy of a bloodthirsty killer. Okay, I like this. I like the thrills. I like the suspense. Let's start here. Pamela, Chapter 1. Freetown Street, Port Harcourt, December 15th. Pamela woke and jolted upright, her heart threatening to jump out of her chest. It was pitch black and silent, so quiet that for a moment she didn't know where she was. Moments passed before sound began to filter through the stillness, the ticking of a grandfather clock, crickets chirping outside the window, and she slowly realized that she was home in her bed, safe. She found her torch with a shaky hand and clicked it on to illuminate the room. The pile of unwashed clothes in the corner, her school bag slung across the frame of her chair, and the stack of books on the decks weren't monsters after all. The only monster was the faceless one in her nightmares, the one she was convinced wouldn't be there at all if not for Ebere and her conspiracy theories. She leaned back into the headboard and took in a few deep breaths to ease the tension in her chest and shoulders. Just wait until I catch you, Pamela muttered. She squeezed the blanket strewn across her legs as though it was the front of a buried blouse. Her bedside alarm clock showed 4 a.m. She wouldn't be falling asleep anytime soon, so she reached under her pillow for her pride and joy, her Infinix phone. Sure, it was London used, and sure, she had somehow cracked the screen and the sharpness of the camera wasn't exactly top of the range. But she loved that it was bright orange and covered in false rhinestones. This phone was her getaway to an online world that she could always escape into, so long as she had data. She typed in her passcode and the screen lit up. No new messages except for some marketing spam for Christmas ember sales that she couldn't afford. She opened Instagram. Let's see what Regina Daniels is up to. In a fair world, Regina would be her best friend, and they would hang out at her movie sets together, fly private, and only dwell in mansions. But Pamela's real life involved scrolling through Regina's feed as she swatted away aggressive mosquitoes out for her blood. And her actual best friend might be crazy. She reached for her glasses on the nightstand. The sight of them drew another pitiful sigh out of her, and an eye roll thrown in for good measure. 3 years ago, her father made her get the ugliest spectacles he could find. Pamela didn't need a soothsayer to tell her that these glasses were selected with the sole purpose of repelling boys. The only other person who had glasses like these was Harry Potter. Is it not bad enough that I don't have a mom, that I am short sighted, and that our house is one of the smallest and shabbiest in Freetown? Must he now insist that I be as ugly as possible too? Her aunties called it love. She would thank him later when she was older. Pamela wasn't so sure. The only redeeming feature of the horrible glasses was their golden hue. She read somewhere that jewel tone and yellow gold look great on dark skinned people. So, in a way, the gold colored, round frame suited her features and made her stand out. She smiled to herself. Pamela Lawson 1, Daddy 0. She must have fallen asleep scrolling through her phone. The morning light streaming through the curtains just stood her awake. She stayed in bed, going over the day ahead. The only thing she had lined up was a shift at her father's auto shop, and of course, her plan to kill a berry. Something else nagged at her, tugging at the corner of her mind like a child pulling on the hem of its mother's dress for attention. Today was the anniversary. Unlike most days, she couldn't suppress the painful memories from bubbling to the surface, thoughts about what had happened to her best friend, Janet Uzor. They were once a trio, Pamela, Ebere, and Janet. She had been the vivacious one, Janet, the queen bee, the one who could get whatever she wanted, the definition of beauty and brains. Pamela still couldn't bring herself to think about the incident. All she knew was that one minute Janet was alive, and the next she was dead. Ebere, on the other hand, liked to remember things, every little detail, and like a buzzing fly, she never let up. She hadn't been the same since Janet died. Ebere had been annoying before, but now she was often unbearable. When Janet's body arrived at the mortuary, a 23-year-old resident doctor, who happened to be Ebere's aunt, received it. Ebere had been so adamant that Janet wasn't dead, that it was all a huge mistake. She had camped outside the hospital for hours, waiting for confirmation. Her aunt had to deliver the truth to her personally, but she told Ebere something else too, and had unknowingly planted a seed in her mind that managed to grow into a mighty oak. During the autopsy, her aunt had noticed something strange. Janet's lungs didn't have the amount of water one would expect for a drowning victim. If I didn't know any better, I would say she was already dead before she got into that river. Ebere became an investigator. In the months afterwards, she started to research and piece together deaths of other kids in their town, and she narrowed them down to four suspicious cases, all the victims from Afobiri Secondary School. There were James Iyaye, the senior prefect whose spleen had been ruptured by a car as he crossed the street. A year later, Paul Tamu Nowari was found dead in a well, and the next year, Mata Atta had been discovered by her mother lying twisted at the bottom of the stairs with a broken neck. Then, exactly a year ago today, Janet Uzor was found unresponsive on the shallow banks of Ibeto River. Don't you think it's odd how every year for the past 4 years, someone in our school has died? Ebere had said. 6 months after Janet's passing, Ebere had invited Pamela to their favorite fast food joint, Eat and Smile, on Lagos Street for spicy jollof rice and fried plantain. It wasn't even her birthday or anything. She should have known it was a trap. Pamela had chewed her food thoughtfully as she plotted a way to remove herself from the situation. People die, Ebere. That's life. So that's it? Yes. Okay, forget the ones we don't know. James and Co. Let's talk about our friend that we know very well. Janet had been swimming in Ibeto River since JSS1. How many regional and national competitions did she win, Pam? How would she drown just like that? Pamela heard the emotions training her friend's voice and found herself swayed by it. I don't know. I really can't explain it, but it was an accident, Iberi. It only takes one mistake. It only has to happen once. Babes, I don't think any of them, James, Paul, Martha, and Janet died by accident. Someone killed them. Pamela's jaw dropped and her fork clattered onto her plate. Ebere didn't even bother to acknowledge the shock on her face. She continued, undeterred. Reason am well. Ebere raised an open palm and counted off each piece of evidence on her fingers. They all died during the Christmas holidays. The reason am o. They were all discovered after they died. Alone, meaning no witnesses. This shows planning and evil intentions, Pam. There is a killer among us. Pam regained her composure and observed her friend over the rim of her glasses before she said with a sigh, Ebere. She circled her index finger in the air for emphasis. Are you saying that you are smarter than all the people and the police officers in Port Harcourt? That there is a serial killer in our town and you are the only one who knows about it? Waiting I talk now no make sense to you? It makes plenty sense, but that's only if we are to write a narrative essay for Mr. Adeleke. A simple smile spread across her lips as she considered it. It would actually be an awesome story. He would be thrilled by your mind blowing. This isn't a joke, Pam. If I'm right, it means someone else is going to die this year. Ebere's obsession with her serial killer theory had only grown since then. In fact, it seemed that was all she talked about. Pamela ran a hand over her goose-bumped arms. No wonder I'm having nightmares. After being stalked and killed, she entered the parlor just as the power was restored and flicked on the TV. Her father had subscribed for the Star Times Classic bouquet for the holidays. Things weren't so bad after all, she thought, as she made her way to the kitchen to make breakfast of fried yam and egg sauce. As she danced away from the hot oil, a loud bang outside the house instantly sent her scurrying for cover. Her heart thudded wildly in her chest, and her glasses slipped down her nose. She heard the sound again, but this time she recognized it as someone banging on the front door. Are you still sleeping at this hour? Ah, Ebere Annie. Pamela set her shoulders back and closed her hands into fists as she flung the front door open. Ebere took a step back in surprise. Are you going to a battlefield or something? Why are you so angry early in the morning? She stepped around Pamela and flopped onto the single sofa. Pamela shut the door, then sat facing Ebere. She rolled her eyes at Ebere's dowdy blue shirt that made her look like a boy. Tufts of hair had escaped her cornrows. She also looked thinner than before her obsession with Janet's death began. Has she lost weight? Ebere yawned and flashed Pamela a smile. I'm so glad you are alive. Though Ebere greeted her this way every day now and knew the answer to come, Pamela said, why wouldn't I be? You know why? There's a cycle running loose. Every day I wake up to find that no one has died is a blessing. Do you know how many hours of vigil I do praying for you? Praying that the killer is caught before someone else dies? Pamela looked closely at her friend and noticed her tired, red-rimmed eyes and dull complexion for the first time. She shrugged off the sympathy that crept into her annoyance. Can we please not talk about this for once? Christmas is coming, and I'm already stressed enough as it is. Ebere frowned. It was her turn to lean closer to inspect her friend's face. Why? What's going on? You Pam poked Ebere's broad shoulders with her finger. God, Ebere, how can you not understand? Understand what? That some things are too painful to remember and are better forgotten. I just want to forget everything that happened and move on. You are making it impossible to properly grieve our friend. Nothing, don't worry, I beg, Pamela said instead. Are you sure? Did something happen? No, nothing. Just please, let's talk about something else. Pamela had planned to go harder on Ebere to explain how much she hated hearing her conspiracy theories, but she had lost her resolve. If she fought and pushed Ebere away, she would lose another best friend, and she couldn't lose anyone else. All right, said Ebere. I promise, no more talk of the cycle today. They headed to the kitchen, chatting idly as they cooked. I wish this holiday was shorter. Oh. I don't tire for that house, Ebere said. If you complain, what will I now say? Now I'm forced to spend every waking moment with my father. No breathing space. At least you have your own space in your father's mansion. The grass is not greener on the other side, though. And this Christmas just dry, eh? But you guys don't do Christmas now, so why are you complaining? You should be out preaching or something. Ebere muttered something under her breath. What is this one saying? Pamela added plantain to the mix since Ebere wasn't a fan of yam. How's Lover Boy and his cigarette legs? Ebere asked. Pamela knew she was referring to Echezona, but she wasn't in the mood to talk about. Bang! Pamela and Ebere glanced at each other. Ebere whispered, I told you we are not safe. Pamela rolled her eyes. It's nothing, see? For the second time that morning, she strode across the room and flung the door open. Echezona had a calming effect on her. He always had. She should have been surprised to see him standing there in his trademark ripped skinny jeans and V-neck jumper. But instead, a tranquility washed over her. He met her eyes and smiled. She stepped outside the door, leaving it slightly ajar behind her. His face fell, disappointed that she hadn't invited him in. Why are you here? I missed you. I wanted to see how you're doing. Eche had a cool upper inflection at the end of his sentences that always made his sentences sound like questions. You don't need to check on me anymore, remember? Are you alone? He craned his neck to look over her head into the house. Who is in there with you? Daniel? So what if it is? A few months ago, she would have found this petty jealousy sweet and charming, but today she was too rattled to care. Pamela pushed up her glasses and folded her arms across her chest as if she was protecting her heart from his soulful expressions. His eyes moistened and they both looked away from each other. He stuffed his hands into his pockets. Well, I'll see you around, Pam, he said, half turning away from her. It was a thing they used to say to each other. She always responded with, not if I see you first. But things had changed between them. Yeah, she said in a stiff, artificial tone. She watched him leave, and once she couldn't see him anymore, she went back into the house. Ebere was predictably not impressed. That was Lover Boy Abi, she said with a mouthful of plantain, barely disguising her contempt of him. Pamela always wondered why Ebere didn't care for Eche and had hoped to ask, but then, out of the blue, he'd broken up with her. Now she didn't care, or at least she told herself she didn't. Even though Eche was handsome and popular, Ebere wasn't the jealous type, and her dislike of Eche went way back to JSS2, before he and Pamela ever started to like each other. When Pamela pressed Ebere for an answer, she always said, Look, If you can't see it yourself, there's no point explaining it to you because you won't get it. Janet, however, had gotten along with Eche as she did with most people. In a way, it was because of Janet that Pamela and Eche had a relationship at all. She always gave great advice on how to handle boys, how to date without your parents finding out. Pamela glanced at the grandfather clock in the living room. It was already 10:20 a.m. She squealed and rushed Ebere onto her feet, yelling that her father was going to kill her. Pamela pushed her confused friend out of the house and rushed back into the kitchen to warm her father's breakfast. At the front door, she paused to put on her shoes. One of her father's many rules: no one entered his house with their outside shoes. As she slid them on, she noticed a white envelope peeking out from the corner of the welcome mat. Black soot speckled the front. How long had it been there? A few minutes? All night? She reached down and stuffed it in her back pocket. Pamela ran down the street, waving at jobless gossips who sat in front of their houses, and got to the Lagos bus stop, where she flagged down a taxi going towards New Market. Once inside, and on her way to her father's workshop at last, she remembered the note and pulled it out. Inside the plain white envelope was a folded sheet of paper, torn from a notebook, and some colorful pieces of glossy paper that looked like they were part of a photograph or magazine that had been cut into tiny pieces. Curious, she pushes her fingers into the envelope and took out the note. Then she shook out the pieces of paper onto her lap. It only took a few seconds to recognize it as a photograph that someone had cut with a pair of scissors. Her heart beat faster. She pushed her glasses to her face and noticed her hands were trembling. What is this? She picked up the note and opened it. The words gripped her throat like an ice cold vice. I am watching you, Pam. Happy Halls.